When we made the module with the command you see on the screen here, it created our MVC folders for us, model views and handlers, in our module. Let's take a look at that now here in VS Code. There's my module, and there's our model views and handlers, which is the same as controllers folder for us. Each module can have its own models, views, and controllers, and you can access them from other modules in your app if you need to. The most common situation is accessing the models. That's really easy to do, and we can use the same inject syntax we saw earlier to take advantage of that. So here I'm in my model folder for my admin tools, and you can see I've added a model called administrators. It's a really simple CFC for now. It simply has a constructor and a method getAdminUsers, which returns an array of administrative users for the system. In a real application, this would probably come out of a SQL query of some sort, but to keep the demo simple, we're just going to go with a hard-coded array for now. Let's say I want to use this model from not the module here, my admin tools, but from the main application itself in my users list page. I'm going to list out all the users that are being pulled out of our database, as well as these admin users from this module. Here's my users list handler, and at the top of the users handler CFC, you can see I've got this new property tag. Property name is objadmins, and I'm injecting the administrators model from the myAdminTools module. Notice the syntax here. I've got inject equals model name and then an @ sign and the name of the module. That's how you do the namespacing, if you will, when grabbing a model from a different module other than the one that you're currently in. You say, go get this model out of this module. It will then return it back into a variable, just like when you use the property inject syntax to grab a model out of the base application. So now I have a variable objadmins, which of course has this method getAdminUsers in it. Scroll down here to our list event handler, and you can see here's the code from before that grabs all the users out of our database. And here's the new line of code we've added, calling the objadmins variable and the getAdminUsers method inside it, saving that into a variable called ARYAdmins. And let's take a look at our users list view and see how that works. Here's our views, users list. Here's our loop from before, which loops over the users coming out of the database. And here's our new loop that loops over the admin users. We've added that in here as well. And all of this syntax is exactly the same as it is up here. These links don't have, or these names rather, don't have links to other pages, so there's no event.build link in here. But that's not really because it is or isn't a module. That's just because we don't have links to these particular users in the system. Here's our original loop, and here's the new loop that grabs everyone out of the stuff coming from our module. And you can see if we run that in the browser, here's the users from before, and here's the data coming from our module through that other property tag that we injected right here. So you can get models from both your host or base application and models from any of the other modules in your application. All you have to do is add the @ sign and the name of the module to the end, save and reload your application so that this change gets picked up by Colbox, and you're all set. In an earlier video, we looked at this link here. We go to myAdminTools, and that goes into the module myAdminTools, which is also part of the URL we have up here in our web browser. This first part of the URL, the part that is the name of the module, is actually what we call the module entry point. That's a setting in your Colbox or module config CFC rather. MyAdminTools, this.entry point. This is in the module config for that particular module. You can change that to something else if you want to. Maybe I just want to make it say admin. Save that. Now when I go back to my browser and we reload our application, fwre_init equals 1, and I'll get rid of that URL variable off of the end just to make our URL nice and clean. We'll go back here to messages list. And now when I hover over that link, you can see down at the bottom of my browser, it goes to admin home index, and that's exactly what it links to here. Back in our code, let's take a look at what we have here. The event.build link didn't change. That still points to myAdminTools, but internally, Colbox can take the information we pass it here, which is the actual module name, and it can look in the module config for our entry point, and it knows when it actually creates the links in the system to route people to /admin instead of /myadmintools. And I can set that to whatever value I want as long as it's a valid string of characters for a URL. So I can use this to do things like mask modules, make them a little bit less visible to the URL for users in your system. Maybe I just want to hide some of the modules I'm using, or maybe we just have a consistent naming convention we use for URLs at this company, and I want to make sure I follow those without having to rename all of the modules in my application to do so. I can simply go into the this.entryPoint setting in each module's config file, change it, save the file, do an FW reinit to start our application again, and it will start working this way. You can also add routes to your application that take care of routes in your modules a couple of different ways. You can go into your router CFC file for your application and add them there, just like we saw with routes in one of the previous videos. You can also call the method add module routes and add the pattern and then the module that it points to in code directly in your application. That looks about like so. So I can have a pattern, say /blog would be the URL that I want people to type in their browser, and that would actually route to the simple blog module if that's installed in my application. Same thing if I want to go to /admin, that could go to the admin module. We're not actually changing what the URL would be in this case, but you could put all of your module routes in there, even if you're sort of mixing and matching, changing the name of the route versus the name of the module, just to be consistent and have everything in one place. When you do that, this, for example here, /blog will point to the simple blog module. It'll bounce everything over to that file, or that module rather. Then in your module, you have your module config CFC that we've already discussed. You can add your own routes section in there that looks for patterns within that route for that module, and then points to specific handlers and actions inside that module. So that's similar to this code here in our router CFC from the host application itself. I have a pattern that points to a particular target event. I can name it and that sort of thing too. So basically this sort of syntax here is real similar to what you can do with the route config inside your module config CFC. You have a pattern and that points to a specific handler and action, and all you have to do is reload your Coldbox application. These will take effect, and the routes here in your module will work the same way as routes in your host application. We've discussed modules and how they relate to the host application. Your host can have as many modules as you want, but did you know that your modules can also have modules of their own? You just go into the folder where your module lives and create a module subfolder inside there. Then drop whatever modules you want inside that folder. And those submodules can also have modules of their own, and so on and so on and so on, for as many levels deep as you need to go with nesting modules in your application. The only limit is memory on your server for storing everything. This can be really handy for grouping similar pieces of functionality together, especially in really large applications. Rather than having dozens of things in your /modules app folder, for example, you can just store things in subfolders as you need underneath that, and you can go as many levels deep as you need to within your application. When we created the module, we got folders for models, views, and handlers, but not a folder for layouts. Let's take a look just so you know I'm not lying to you. Here's my module, my admin tools, and you can see there's nothing in here for layouts. So when pages in the admin tools are rendered, it uses the /layout folder from our host application. That makes sense. We're treating this as one giant application. Logic dictates that all of it should have the same layout. But what if we want to override that and have some pages on our module that have their own layout? Well, just like with any other Coldbox app, it's all about naming conventions. And if you provide a new layout file for your module, that one will get used instead. If you want to override a layout in your application so that a specific module has its own layout, you don't put the layout in the folder where your module lives. You actually put the layout in the layouts folder of your host application. Technically, you put it in a subfolder underneath the layouts for your application. Here's the basic folder structure. So you've got your application, and it has a layouts folder in it, just like we had before. You simply add a new subfolder underneath there called modules, and then add another folder underneath there with the name of your module. So here in the docs, it's simple module, but in our code, it's going to be my admin tools because that's the name of our module. And then just like the main layout that you use for all of your application by default is main.cfm, inside that my admin tools folder, put a main.cfm layout file. I've got mine here on the screen now, and you can see it's a real stripped down minimal layout, just to make it easy to tell that we have a different layout here versus the rest of the application. I'm going to go back here to my browser, reload the page, and right now we're in the host application. We're on the messages list page. When I click on this Go to Admin Tools link, you can see at the bottom of my browser, that's going to go into the My Admin Tools module. And when I click that, I get the content from my admin page, but you can see it's the stripped down, super minimal layout that is specific to this module in the application. We didn't change anything in the module itself to do that. All we did was go here to the Layouts folder of our host application, add the folder modules, a subfolder under there with the name of our module, and then put a main.cfm file inside that folder. Save and reload your application, and you can start using custom layouts for your modules. It's easy to see how much can be done with modules. You don't have to go super crazy with them. Like everything else in ColdBox, use the features that you would benefit from and skip the others until you're ready. You can find more information about modules in the online documentation at coldbox.ortusbooks.com.